I invited my son and daughter-in-law for Christmas dinner. I gave him a BMW and her a designer bag. Then my son smirked. We didn't get you anything. She just smiled. I handed them an envelope. Then here's my gift to you. He opened it and froze. I watched my son park the beat-up Honda in my driveway and felt my chest tighten. Christmas Eve. First time they'd visited in 3 months. The last time was September. Jessica had insisted they couldn't make it for Thanksgiving. Mark's swamped with work, she'd said over the phone, her voice sugar-sweet. You understand, right? We'll definitely make Christmas. Now, here they were, 37 minutes late. The doorbell rang. I opened it and there was Mark, my only child, 28 years old, wearing the tired expression of someone who hadn't slept well in months. Behind him stood Jessica, blonde hair perfectly curled despite the December rain, holding an empty wine bottle. Hey, Dad! Mark hugged me quickly, too quickly, the kind of hug you give someone at a networking event. Merry Christmas, Henry. Jessica's smile was wide, rehearsed, the kind that never quite reached her eyes. Dinner smells amazing. Is that turkey? She was already looking past me into the house, cataloging, assessing. I'd spent 2 days cooking. Turkey with herb butter, stuffing from scratch using my late wife's recipe, mashed potatoes, roasted Brussels sprouts, the green bean casserole Mark used to beg for as a kid when he was 7 and believed Santa was real. Everything perfect. Come in, I said. Food's almost ready. Jessica kicked off her shoes, expensive heels I knew Mark couldn't afford on his assistant manager salary at the sporting goods store. She walked through my living room like she owned it, trailing her fingers across the furniture Claire and I had picked out 23 years ago. You really should update this place, she said, wrinkling her nose at my leather couch. Very 2001. There are some great interior designers I follow on Instagram. I could send you their info. Mark shot me an apologetic look. I like it how it is, I said evenly. We ate at 6:47 p.m. I'd set the table with Claire's good china, the set her mother had given us for our wedding. White plates with delicate blue flowers around the rim. Jessica loaded hers with food and scrolled through her phone while she chewed. Mark talked about work, about inventory counts and Black Friday sales and a promotion that might happen next quarter. Jessica checked her phone 4 times before dessert. Everything okay? I asked. She looked up, startled. Oh, yeah, just checking on something. On Christmas Eve? She smiled that smile again. I volunteer at a women's shelter. They might need me to cover a shift tomorrow. Mark nodded along, pride shining in his exhausted eyes. I'd already run a background check on her. Standard procedure when my son got engaged to someone he'd known for 6 months. Jessica Lynn Morrison. No criminal record. No volunteer work at any shelter in the Tri-County area. But I hadn't said anything. Mark was happy, or seemed happy. Now, watching her thumb through her messages while my son sat beside her trying to make conversation with me, I wondered if he actually was. Should we do gifts? I asked, clearing the plates. Mark shifted in his seat, glanced at his wife. Yeah, sure. I retrieved the small box from the hall closet first. Red wrapping paper, gold ribbon. I'd wrapped it myself, badly, because Claire used to do that, and I'd never learned. Here, I said, handing it to Mark. Open this one first. He peeled back the paper carefully. Always had been careful with gifts, even as a kid, like he was afraid of wasting something precious. The box opened. He stared at the BMW key fob, black leather, chrome logo. Dad, is this in the garage? I said. 2021 BMW 330i, certified pre-owned, 32,000 miles. Thought you could use something more reliable than that Honda. Mark's hands shook. He looked at me with something like disbelief. You didn't have to. I know. Dad, this is too much. I can't. You can. You will. The title's already in your name. Insurance is paid through June. Consider it an early inheritance. He hugged me then. A real hug. The kind he used to give when he was small and I'd pick him up from soccer practice. Jessica's eyes tracked to the garage door, calculating. Wow, she said flatly. That's generous. Then I handed her the second box, larger, wrapped in silver. Her fingers moved quickly, tearing through paper. Inside was the designer handbag. Prada, Saffiano leather, black with gold hardware. The exact one she'd been browsing online for 3 months. I knew because I'd checked the browser history on their laptop when they'd left me alone in their apartment last month. They'd invited me for dinner, Jessica's idea, Mark said, and she'd excused herself to run to the store for dessert. Mark had followed her out to help carry groceries. I'd had 11 minutes. Their laptop was still open on the dining table. No password. Shopping carts full of designer items. Browsing history for divorce attorneys in our county. A Google Doc titled H's House Market Value and Timeline. I'd photographed everything with my phone. Now Jessica opened the Prada box, and her eyes lit up for exactly 2 seconds. Pure, genuine excitement. Then the mask slid back into place. Cute, she said, tossing it onto the couch beside her. Thanks, Henry. Not thank you properly. Not even fake gratitude with pretend emotion. Just cute, like I'd given her a keychain from a gas station. Mark cleared his throat. His ears were red, the way they always got when he was uncomfortable. Dad, about About your gift. He glanced at Jessica. She nodded. Permission. We didn't get you anything this year. The words hung in the air between us. Silence. The Christmas tree lights blinked red and green in my peripheral vision. The same lights Claire and I had bought at Target 17 years ago. 3 strands were burned out, but I kept using them anyway because replacing them felt like erasing her. Oh, I said. Jessica leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. Gold bracelets clinked together. Also expensive. Also beyond Mark's budget. We thought it would be good for you to learn about giving without expecting anything back. Her smile widened. Christmas has gotten too materialistic, you know? The true spirit is about generosity, not transactions. Mark nodded. Yeah, so maybe just enjoy the act of giving this year? He looked at the BMW keys in his lap. At the designer handbag his wife had already dismissed like garbage. At me. I could have cried, could have yelled, could have thrown them both out into the December rain. Instead, I reached into my jacket pocket. Well, I said quietly, keeping my voice level, if tonight is about lessons, then here's mine. I pulled out a thick manila envelope, the kind used for legal documents, and set it on the table between us. What's that? Mark asked. Jessica's smile flickered, just for a second, but I saw it. Open it, I said, looking straight at her. Mark undid the metal clasp with shaking fingers, pulled out the first photograph. His face went white. Jessica in a tight red dress I'd never seen before. Some guy's hand on her waist. Restaurant I didn't recognize. They were laughing. Her head was tilted back, mouth open mid-laugh, the way Mark used to make her laugh when they first started dating. What is this? Mark whispered. He grabbed the next photo, then another. Jessica and the same man, outside the Marriott downtown, getting into a silver Mercedes, her hand on his chest, his hand on her lower back. Another photo, same Mercedes, parked outside their apartment complex at 2:17 a.m., according to the timestamp. The driver's side door open, Jessica's silhouette visible in the passenger seat. Dad, what? Keep going, I said. His hands were trembling now. He found the printed text messages, pages of them. I'd had them blown up, highlighted the relevant parts. His lips moved as he read. Mark's dad has that big house on Riverside. Once we convince him to sell and downsize, after the divorce I'll get half of Mark's assets plus the settlement. He doesn't suspect a thing, thinks I actually love him. Mark's breath hitched. Tell me this is fake, he said, voice cracking. Tell me you photoshopped this. Your father is trying to manipulate you, Jessica snapped. She stood abruptly, chair scraping against hardwood. He's jealous. He can't stand that you have your own life now, that you're not his little boy anymore. This is what controlling parents do when they lose power. Who's David Brennan? Mark cut her off. She froze. The guy in the photos, Mark continued, his voice shaking. The one whose car you were getting into at 2 a.m. The one you've been texting about stealing my inheritance. It's not what it looks like. Then what is it? Mark's voice rose. What else could this possibly be? We're friends. He's helping me with a business idea. You told him you don't love me. Mark's voice broke completely. You said I doesn't suspect a thing. You're planning to divorce me and take half of everything, including my father's house, which isn't even mine yet because he's still fucking alive. The profanity shocked me. Mark never cursed, not even as a teenager. Jessica's face hardened. You're being dramatic. How long? Mark demanded. Mark, how long have you been cheating on me? I am not. Mark stood so fast, his chair tipped over backward. It hit the floor with a crack. 7 months, I said quietly. They both looked at me. The affair started in May, I continued. You met David Brennan at that marketing conference in Seattle. He's 43, divorced, owns a consulting firm, makes $340,000 a year. You exchanged numbers. Started texting 2 days later. First sexual encounter was June 8th at the Marriott. You've met him 17 times since then. Jessica's face drained of color. How? I hired someone. I pulled out another document. Private investigator. James Chen, licensed in Oregon since 2003. 15 years experience in infidelity cases. He's very thorough. Mark sank into his chair, staring at the photographs spread across the table like playing cards. You lied to me, he whispered, about everything. I didn't lie. You told me your car broke down last month when you missed our anniversary dinner. His voice was hollow. But you weren't at the mechanic. You were with him. Jessica said nothing. You convinced me to ask my dad to sell this house. Mark looked at me, eyes wet. You said we needed help with a down payment, that he was being selfish keeping such a big place for just himself. You made me feel guilty about it. This house is worth $740,000, I said. Current market value according to Zillow. You were planning to convince me to sell and help with your down payment, then divorce Mark within 6 months and claim half of whatever he received as marital assets. That's not, it's in the texts, I said. Page 7. You told David the timeline. You even joked about how easy I'd be to manipulate because I was still grieving the dead wife. Mark made a sound like he'd been punched. Jessica's mask cracked completely. Her face twisted into something ugly. You had no right to invade my privacy. You had no right to steal from my son, I said. My voice was still calm, still quiet. Or to use his mother's death death as a manipulation tactic. This is illegal. You can't just hire someone to follow me. Actually, I can. Oregon is a one-party consent state for recordings. James documented everything in public spaces where you had no reasonable expectation of privacy. It's all admissible in divorce court. Jessica grabbed her phone from the table, started texting furiously. Who are you texting? Mark asked. None of your business. David. Her thumb stopped moving. You're warning him, Mark said. His voice was flat now, empty. You're telling him I know. Mark, listen to me. Jessica reached for his hand. He jerked away like she'd burned him. Don't touch me. You're throwing away our marriage over some misunderstanding. 17 times, Mark repeated. You cheated on me 17 times, while I was working overtime to save money for our future, while I was lying awake at night wondering why you seemed so distant, while I was defending you to my father when he asked if everything was okay. I had asked 3 months ago, when they'd canceled Thanksgiving, is Jessica making you happy? I'd said over the phone. Mark had hesitated too long before saying yes. Get out, Mark said now. Jessica blinked. What? Get out of my father's house. Mark, you need to calm down. Get out, he was shouting now. Get out before I call the police and have you removed. You can't. This isn't your house. You're not on the deed. You're not welcome here. Leave. Jessica looked at me. For help, maybe. For confirmation that this was really happening. I said nothing. She grabbed the Prada bag from the couch, shoved her phone inside. You're going to regret this, she hissed at Mark. Choosing him over me. You'll come crawling back in a week. No, Mark said. I won't. Your father poisoned you against me. You poisoned yourself, I said quietly. I just documented it. Jessica's face went red. You're a bitter old man who can't accept that his son grew up and left you. You manipulated this entire situation. I gave you a $2,400 handbag, I said. How is that manipulation? She had no answer. Keep it, I added. You earned it. 7 months of lying is hard work. She grabbed her coat and stormed toward the door, then stopped, turned back. He's not perfect, you know. She spat at Mark. Your precious father. He's controlling, obsessive. He probably drove your mother to... Finish that sentence, I said, my voice dropping to something dangerous. And I will make sure every person in your life sees those photographs. Your parents, your co-workers, every single person in your contacts list. Jessica's mouth snapped shut. My wife died of a brain aneurysm, I continued, while cooking dinner. She collapsed in this kitchen, and I held her while we waited for the ambulance. So unless you want me to add defamation to the list of reasons Mark's divorce lawyer will destroy you in court, I suggest you leave. Now. She slammed the door so hard the Christmas wreath fell off and hit the porch. Silence. Mark sat frozen at the table, staring at the photographs. His wife with another man. His wife planning to rob him blind. His wife's real face finally visible after 2 years of performance. How long have you known? He finally asked. 2 months. Since October. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? He was quiet for a long moment, then shook his head. No, I would have thought you were jealous, or controlling, or trying to ruin my marriage because you couldn't handle being alone. Exactly. But the gifts, the car, that bag. Why? Because I needed her to show you who she really is. I could have handed you this envelope 2 months ago, but you would have made excuses for her. She would have cried and apologized and blamed stress or me or anything else, and you would have forgiven her because you love her, or thought you did. Mark's hands were shaking. So, you gave us expensive gifts to... What? To show you what gratitude looks like when it's real versus when it's fake. You hugged me. You were genuinely grateful, genuinely moved. She called a $2,400 bag cute and tossed it away like trash. Then she told you that teaching me a lesson about giving was more important than basic human decency. Mark looked at the BMW keys still sitting on the table. She made you feel guilty for accepting a gift from your own father, I continued. Made you believe that receiving generosity was somehow wrong or materialistic, all while planning to steal far more from both of us. I almost convinced you to sell. His voice cracked. This house, Mom's house. I know. That's why I had to show you tonight. What do I do now? I slid another paper across the table. Business card. Sarah Chen, family law attorney. 15 years experience. Specializes in high conflict divorce. You protect yourself, I said. And you remember who actually had your back. The private investigator's name was actually James Chen. No relation to the lawyer, he'd assured me when I hired him in October. I'd found him through an old colleague from the hospital where I'd worked as a cardiac surgeon for 31 years before retiring. Dr. Richard Porter, chief of cardiology, married 3 times, had used James to document his second wife's affair in 2018. Best money I ever spent, Richard had told me over coffee. Guy's a ghost, gets everything on camera, saved me millions in the divorce. I'd called James the next day. Tell me everything, he'd said during our first meeting at his office in Northwest Portland. Small space, clean desk, wall of diplomas and PI licenses. So I told him about Jessica's shopping habits that didn't match their income, about the overnight volunteering that I'd verified never happened. I'd called 3 women's shelters realtors in the area. None had heard of her. About the way she looked at my house like she was already measuring it for furniture. About the Google Doc I'd found on their laptop titled H's House, Market Value and Timeline. James had nodded slowly. How long have they been married? 2 years. They dated for 6 months before that. Fast engagement. Yes. Your son's financial situation? He makes $43,000 a year. She works part-time at a boutique, maybe $22,000, but she carries a $1,200 purse and drives a leased Audi. James had made notes. Any joint assets? Their apartment is rented. They have one shared credit card. His truck is in his name only, the Honda. Everything else is either hers or mine. What about inheritance? I'd felt my chest tighten. My wife died 18 months ago. Left everything to me. I've made it clear that when I die, everything goes to Mark. The house, my retirement accounts, life insurance, roughly $1.4 million total. James had looked up from his notes. Does Jessica know this? Mark told her. He thought it was good news, security for their future. When? About a month before they got engaged. James had smiled grimly. I'll start surveillance tomorrow. It took him 6 weeks to build the case. Photographs of Jessica and David Brennan at restaurants, hotels, his condo in the Pearl District, video footage of them kissing in parking garages, audio recordings, legal in Oregon because James had positioned himself close enough in public spaces to capture their conversations. I just need another year, Jessica had told David outside a Starbucks on November 3rd. Once Henry sells the house and gives Mark half, I'll file. We split Mark's payout and get out clean. What if Mark doesn't want to ask his dad to sell? David had said. He will. I'll make sure he feels guilty about it. The old man's alone in a 4-bedroom house while we're crammed in a tiny apartment. It's selfish. Mark already feels bad about it. You're good at this. Jessica had laughed. I've had practice. That audio recording had cost me $4,200. James had included it in a detailed report with timestamps, GPS coordinates, and chain of custody documentation for every piece of evidence. This will hold up in court, he'd said, handing me a USB drive and a thick binder. If he wants to file for divorce, his lawyer will have everything she needs. I'd paid James $12,800 total, worth every penny. Mark stayed until 2:30 a.m. that Christmas Eve. We didn't talk much at first, just sat in the living room, him on the couch, me in Claire's old reading chair, while the tree lights blinked and the house settled around us. I thought she loved me, he finally said. Maybe part of her did, at first. When did it change? I don't know. Maybe it never was real. He picked up one of the photographs. Jessica and David laughing outside a wine bar. She looks happy here. Happier than I've seen her in months. I'm sorry. Don't be. You saved me. He set down the photo. If you hadn't found out, if you'd actually sold this house, she would have left anyway, wouldn't she? Yes, with half of everything. That was the plan. Mark leaned forward, elbows on his knees, face in his hands. How did you know? What made you suspicious? I thought back to September, to the first red flag I'd consciously noticed, though in retrospect there had been dozens before that. You canceled Thanksgiving, I said, and when I called to confirm you weren't coming, I heard her in the background coaching you. Tell him we're swamped with work, like she was feeding you lines. I didn't realize you wouldn't. You were busy trying to make her happy, but I heard it, and then I started noticing other things. Like what? Like how she always had a reason you couldn't visit. Work, errands, her volunteering, like how she'd steer every conversation toward my house, how big it was, how much it must cost to maintain, how I should really consider downsizing, like how she bought herself expensive gifts but never seemed to buy you anything. Mark was quiet. And then there was the jewelry, I continued. Gold bracelets, diamond earrings, a watch that cost at least $3,000. I asked you about it once. You said she'd been saving up. She told me they were gifts from her parents. I called her mother in October, asked if she'd be joining us for Thanksgiving. During that conversation, I mentioned how lovely Jessica's new earrings were. Her mother said she hadn't bought Jessica jewelry in 10 years because Jessica preferred cash gifts. Mark looked up at me, eyes red. That's when I knew for certain, I said. Someone was buying her expensive things. It wasn't you. It wasn't her parents. So, I hired James. You did all this while I was pushing you to sell Mom's house. The guilt in his voice was sharp enough to cut. You didn't know, I said, but I should have. I should have seen. Mark, she's a professional. This isn't her first time. He blinked. What? I pulled out another document from the envelope. James ran a background check. Jessica Morrison was married before, to a man named Tyler Kendrick. Lasted 14 months. Divorced in 2019. Tyler filed, citing infidelity and financial manipulation. Mark stared at the divorce decree. She told me she'd never been married, he whispered. I know. She said I was her first serious relationship. She lied about a lot of things. He read through the document. His ex-wife's legal history. Restraining order filed by Tyler. Accusations of harassment after the divorce. Order of protection granted for 2 years. She's done this before, Mark said numbly. Yes. How did I not see this? Because you're a good person who assumes other people are good too. That's not a character flaw, Mark. That's what makes you decent. He set down the papers, tears and looked around the living room, at the Christmas tree with its dying lights, at the photos of Claire on the mantel, her college graduation, our wedding, Mark as a baby in her arms. Mom would have hated her, he said. Your mother was suspicious from the beginning. She never said it outright, but I could tell. Really? Jessica came to Sunday dinner once, remember? Spring 2022, a month before Mom died. Your mother was quiet the whole night. After you left, she asked me if Jessica ever talked about her family or her past. I said I didn't know. Mom said, people who don't talk about their past usually have something to hide. Mark's eyes filled with tears. I wish she was. Here, me too. I wish I'd listened to her, to you, to my own instincts. You're listening now. That's what matters. We sat in silence for a while. Then Mark stood and walked to the mantel, picked up a photo of Claire holding him when he was maybe 3 years old, both of them laughing. I'm sorry, Dad, he said quietly, for the last 2 years, for letting her come between us, for trying to pressure you about the house, for believing her instead of trusting you. You fell in love, or thought you did. That's human. I hurt you. Yes, and you still protected me. Of course I did. You're my son. He set down the photo carefully, turned to face me. What do I do about the car? He asked. What about it? I don't deserve it. Not after. Mark, the car isn't a reward for good behavior. It's a gift from your father, who loves you, who wants you to have reliable transportation, who can afford to help you. Take the car. Jessica will say I'm materialistic, that I chose money over love. Jessica lost her right to an opinion when she decided to commit fraud and adultery. Her judgment of your character is worthless. He almost smiled at that. Almost. I'm going to get a hotel, he said. I can't go back to the apartment tonight. Stay here. Your old room is exactly how you left it. Are you sure? Yes. And tomorrow, or technically today, it's almost 3 a.m. We'll call Sarah Chen and start the divorce process. Mark nodded slowly, then picked up the manila envelope and all its contents. I need to keep these, right? Those are copies. The originals are in a safe deposit box at Wells Fargo. Sarah Chen will get copies too. And I've uploaded everything to encrypted cloud storage as backup. You really thought of everything. I had 2 months to prepare. He looked at me for a long moment. Thank you, Dad. I know I don't deserve. Stop. You deserve protection. You deserve honesty. You deserve a father who has your back. All of which you've always had and always will have. Mark's face crumpled. He crossed the room and hugged me hard, the way he used to when he was small and scared of thunderstorms. I held him while he cried. Sarah Chen filed for divorce on December 27th. Mark had met with her that morning, the day after Christmas. She'd reviewed James Chen's evidence for 40 minutes, then looked at Mark and said, "This is one of the cleanest infidelity cases I've ever seen. We're going to destroy her in court." Jessica tried to fight back. She hired her own lawyer, Mitchell Gregory, a sleazy family law attorney who specialized in defending cheaters. He filed a motion claiming the surveillance was illegal. Judge Patricia Morrison, 17 years on the bench, no nonsense, formerly married to a cheating spouse herself, denied it in under 24 hours. Jessica then claimed emotional abuse and financial control, that Mark had isolated her, that I had manipulated their relationship from the beginning. Sarah Chen submitted the text messages where Jessica called Mark easy to control and too trusting to notice. Jessica claimed she and David Brennan were just friends, and the photographs were taken out of context. Sarah Chen submitted the audio recording where Jessica explicitly discussed divorcing Mark for money. Jessica finally offered to settle. No alimony. She'd move out immediately. Just let her keep the Audi and her personal belongings. Mark agreed. He was too exhausted to fight anymore. The divorce was finalized on March 3rd, 2024, 78 days after Christmas Eve. Jessica moved to Seattle 2 weeks later. According to Mark's lawyer, she and David Brennan had broken up. Apparently, he'd wanted nothing to do with her once he realized he'd been recorded. Mark moved back into his childhood bedroom temporarily while he looked for his own place. He drove the BMW to work every day. Started therapy with Dr. Ellen Rodriguez, licensed clinical psychologist, specializes in betrayal trauma. We had dinner together every Sunday. I taught him how to make Claire's recipes, stuffing, pot roast, apple pie. One evening in late March, Mark was cutting vegetables for stir-fry when he said, "Did Mom really say that? About people hiding their past?" "Yes. I wish I'd paid attention. You were in love. Or thought you were." He set down the knife. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "How did you know that I'd believe you if I saw the evidence myself, that I wouldn't just defend her anyway?" "I thought about it. About all the ways that night could have gone wrong. Mark siding with his wife, refusing to look at the photos, accusing me of manipulation. I didn't know," I admitted. "I hoped, but I didn't know for certain. What would you have done if I'd chosen her, respected your choice, given you the evidence anyway, and waited for you to see the truth in your own time? Even if that meant losing me? I'd never lose you, Mark. You're my son. That doesn't change because you make a mistake or trust the wrong person. It just means I'd wait, however long it took." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm glad you didn't have to wait." "Me too." We finished cooking, ate dinner, watched watched a terrible action movie on TV. Around 10 p.m., Mark's phone buzzed. He looked at it, and his expression darkened. Jessica? I asked. Yeah, she wants to talk things through. Says she misses me. What are you going to do? Mark deleted the message, blocked her number, set down his phone. Nothing, he said. Absolutely nothing.